Hello everybody, today we're going to be looking at a potential East Coast hurricane. Now, most of these models have been showing some sort of system move up the East Coast, and a few of these models, actually the majority of these models, have this as some sort of hurricane. We're going to be going over that in today's video, as well as our other two systems. We have Douglas and we also have Hanna over southern Texas. We're going to be going over that in today's video, and then we're going to, at the second half of the video, really focus in on potential Invest 92L right here. So let's get started here with your National Weather Service page. Now we have large heat for the east, and this is just a pattern that we've been in. We have a high pressure system sitting out over the eastern United States that's bringing in some very, very warm conditions, and you actually have some scattered heat watches or heat advisories for the eastern United States. We have monsoonal rain showers for the southwest over parts of Arizona and Colorado, and also another area of flood watches for Kansas and Nebraska. Then for southern Texas, we have what's going on, of course, with Tropical Storm Hanna, soon to be Tropical Depression Hanna. We have a tornado watch in place, tropical storm warnings, and tropical storm watches in effect for extreme southern Texas, and flood watches underneath there, as well as we have some current ongoing tornado warnings throughout that region, which isn't too uncommon with these. We usually do see a couple of tornadoes spin up just because of the amount of convection you have with these hurricanes or tropical storms. Now, over the western United States, we have hot and dry conditions, and that is leading to some heat advisories and some red flag warnings to go up in place for that region. Now, here is your 5-day graphical outlook from the National Hurricane Center. We have Hanna there south of Texas, currently in Mexico, and then we have disturbance Invest 92L, which is currently just east by about 1,000 miles or so of the Lesser Antilles. That'll be making its way further to the west. Now, that has a 70% chance of developing within the next 48 hours, and within the next 5 days, pretty much certain, with a 90% chance of developing. And that's all from the National Hurricane Center. Tomorrow, I will be making most likely my intensity forecast and also my cone of uncertainty forecast for the next 5 days. So make sure you are staying tuned and you have your notifications turned on. Also, I do want to thank you guys for all the support I received yesterday. I believe I got around 25 subscribers, which I believe is my all-time record for a single day. So I just really want to thank you guys for all the support. Also, if you have any questions about this storm, I will be commenting back and responding to all of your comments as well. But I also just really want to thank you guys. We passed 400 subscribers yesterday. So just really grateful for you guys. Now, let's look in at Douglas right now, which is currently in the Central Pacific, northeast of the Big Island of Hawaii by about 50 miles or so. Now, here is where Hanna is. And Hanna is south of the Texas, and it is currently racking in with about 45 knots in terms of your sustained winds, max gusts of about 55 knots, and we have a 992 millibar low pressure system right there. Now, here are your key messages. I'm not going to read these out, but if you do want to, you can pause the video, or you can go to hurricanes.gov and you can go read that on the National Hurricane Center page. Now, here is your track from the National Hurricane Center. They're bringing this to a tropical depression within the next few hours or so, probably by tonight or early tomorrow morning. It should be a tropical depression. Here is your track from the National Hurricane Center as well, or from these main models, and they are bringing this southwestward into the mountains over northeastern Mexico there. Now, here are your rainfall amounts, and the maximum rainfall amounts are going to be in those higher elevations throughout the Mexican Sierras. So in those higher elevations, you are going to be seeing most likely 6 to 10 inches, maybe even 10 to 15 inches of rainfall. Lower elevations expect 2 to about 6 inches of rainfall on average. Now, here is your intensity guidance from these models, and most of them have it currently as a 45 knot storm or so, and it's going to be drastically weakening within the next 12 to 24 hours. Expect it to become a tropical depression, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. Now, here are your projected wind speeds and the chance of seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, and we have about 100% chance over southern Texas and northeasternmost Mexico, and then around that we have decreasing amounts, and by the time it gets to about Sunday night or into early Monday morning, it should be a post-tropical system by that point. Now, Here is Douglas again, about 50 miles north of the Big Island, or north and east of the Big Island of Hawaii. Now, here is your key messages for Hurricane Douglas, and again, you can go read these on. Just pause the video and you can read these, but I'm not going to read these on the video currently. Now, here is the National Hurricane Center's cone of uncertainty for this system, and most of these, the storm track keeps it north of the island of Maui, so it isn't. It's going to be impacting really just the northern islands with the greatest hurricane force wind speeds. That's why you have hurricane warnings in place. Anyone in that red area, tropical storm watch is in effect for that for a couple of islands northwest of Hawaii, and in that yellow shaded region. And then in that blue region, we have tropical storm warnings in effect for parts of the Big Island of Hawaii. And again, this looks to stay as a hurricane until sometime between 2 a.m. Monday and 2 p.m. Monday, and then it'll weaken, and then by about anywhere between Thursday and Friday, it should weaken into a tropical depression from a tropical storm. Now, here is your tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, and we do have a fairly good chance of seeing those over much of the northern islands, or of the northern 5 or so islands. We should see most likely some of those tropical storm force wind tropical storm force wind speeds at least. Now, here is your hurricane force wind speed probabilities, and we do have a good 20 to 30% chance over the northeastern islands. Now, here is your intensity guidance, and this will strengthen or weaken to a tropical storm within the next 24 to 48 hours, and within the next 72 to 120 hours, it should weaken to a tropical depression. Beyond there, we really don't know as it starts to head into the Western Pacific. Maybe it even re-strengthens as it heads into the Western Pacific. Now, here is currently where Invest 92L is, and it's currently at 11.5 degrees north by 36.9 degrees west. It has maximum winds of 20 knots with a central pressure of about 1010 millibars. Now, let's look at your model guidance and what they are showing for the storm. We have it's going to be tracking north of the Lesser Antilles and moving north of the Caribbean there. So it should be, most of these models have it tracking north of Dominica, and then again moving north and northwestward from there. And then we have to see what happens once it gets into the Bahamas from there. It should impact the Bahamas within the next about 5 to 7 days. Now, here is your ensemble model tracks. We're going to go over your American ensemble models, your Canadian ensemble models, and your European ensemble models, and go over all of that within the next coming minutes. Now, here's the American ensemble models, and you see this has really been the model that's been on top of this whole thing and really bring this up the East Coast. This has been one of the first ensemble models to do that, and you see all these models bring it up the East Coast, and it could impact land. If it does go further west, it would impact parts of the mid-Atlantic and the northeast coast a little bit more than, let's say, the ones that are out to sea. Now, let's start looking at your Canadian ensemble models, and they again have pretty much the same thing, except they're more far and few between. Now, we do have one of these models clipping North Carolina, so we'll have to see about that as it starts to head into the northeast. There's a lot of different solutions with this as to the exact track, and I think actually this can be one of those weird scenarios where the intensity of nailing down the intensity is actually going to be easier than nailing down exactly where this actually tracks. Now, here is your European ensemble model guidance, and we have most of them doing pretty much the same thing that the American ensembles did. And then let's look at some of the rest of the ensemble models, and they again have pretty much the same exact thing for the storm. Now, something I want to note, just 24 hours ago, they had this as a maximum of a Category 1, a low-end Category 2. Now we're already approaching a Category 3 on the intensity guidance, so that is definitely something. It is something interesting. It is looking like it is going to strengthen even more from that Category 2 or Category 3 rating. So we'll have to see about that, and it could achieve strength of about 90 to maybe even 95 knots. So I'll definitely be putting out my intensity guidance by tomorrow. Now, Here is some of the ingredients that we need for a decent hurricane to develop. Now, here are your actual sea surface temperatures, and they are between 26 to 30 degrees Celsius over much of the anywhere from the coastal parts of Africa to all the way to about the mid-Atlantic. And then once you start to get into the northeast, the waters do get a bit cooler, and you go from 26 to 30 degrees Celsius. You go to about 20 to about 26 degrees Celsius. So a bit cooler, but really all you need to sustain a hurricane would be 26 degrees Celsius waters or 80-degree Fahrenheit waters, and that's anywhere in the yellow, the orange, or the red. So we do have those pretty much for, I would say, a good 4/5 of this storm track, and then once it heads into the northeast, that's where it's really a toss-up whether this will strengthen or whether it will weaken. Now, let's start looking at your anomalies, and these are about 2 to 5 degrees above average, especially there for the East Coast region where this does look like it's going to track pretty much the entire way. It's going to be encountering those warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, or at least average sea surface temperatures for much of its journey throughout the Atlantic. Here are your ocean heat content. Here's your ocean heat content map, and we have values between about 25 to about 100 over parts of the Eastern Caribbean, and then also into parts of the southeastern coast. We don't have too much as you get again into the northeast, but that's to be expected. But it should strengthen enough as it gets off the shore of North Carolina that it should probably be a hurricane by that point, and it really won't be strengthening as it gets into the northeast, but it'll stay pretty much at the same that it already was. So, for example, if off the North Carolina coast it's at a Category 2 strength, it'll probably stay at the Category 2, maybe weaken a little bit as it heads into the northeast coastal areas. But then as it starts to move over the northern Atlantic, that's when it should really weaken. Now, let's start looking at your Canadian model and what it's showing. And this is just one of the models. This is your 10-meter wind speeds. And this Canadian model, just want to show you, it is actually going to show later on in the model run a Category 2 or a low-end Category 3 hurricane potentially. And that would be into parts of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. And whether land gets impacted as a Category 2 or Category 3, that looks unlikely right now. But definitely offshore, you will most likely be dealing with either a Category 1 or Category 2, maybe even a Category 3 hurricane. Now, this would be by Thursday. Now, going into Friday, Saturday, it's encountering an area of drier than normal air as well as an area of wind shear right through here. So, if this storm is going to die out before it strengthens again, it is going to be within this area north of the Caribbean where you have wind shear, which will dismantle the system, and we also have drier air, and we also have dust moving throughout that region. So, a triple combination of pretty bad conditions for a hurricane to develop. But as it moves out of that area, that's when it's going to really start to ramp up. And that's when you're starting to see, as you get into those reds, that's where you're starting to see, well, in the greens, that's a tropical storm. And then as you get into those yellows and the reds, that's when you're starting to deal with some sort of hurricane. Now, let's move in to the southeast coast. This would be by Tuesday, August 4th. And you start to see we have some of those whites actually popping up. That's almost a Category 2. And then definitely it would be either a high-end Category 1 or a Category 2 hurricane by this point, as it's offshore of New Jersey, Long Island, and south of Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and you're starting to see a very, very well-defined hurricane, 970 millibars. If this were to move closer to land, it would weaken. It would be weaker than what it's showing right now, but it would also impact land with, of course, some tropical storm winds, maybe even hurricane force wind speeds, and then it moves out into the northeast Atlantic or the northwest Atlantic, moving throughout southeastern Canada, and it'll impact areas like Nova Scotia and Labrador. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and turning on notifications. I'll be responding to all of your comments that you do leave. If you have any questions on the storms, definitely leave them down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.